Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about some possibilities for the upcoming new year of 2020 as a shift in consciousness from material to spiritual. In this show, we will be discussing what is meant by perfect vision and the difference between sense perception and spiritual truth. Listen as we explore the astrology chart of January 1st, 2020, at 0 GMT for insights into the revelation of divine presence by using the 6 planets in Capricorn as principle. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and see life spiritually. So, Swami, I see the title of today's show is 2020, the Year of Perfect Vision. Can you tell us and our listeners about how you came up with that title and why we wanted to talk about that?
Well, 2020 has always been the measurement that when you go for an eye test, they usually say, what's your vision? And if you can see the letters at 20 feet, then you have 2020. Whereas if the letters that you're seeing can be seen by somebody with this quote unquote perfect vision at 40 feet, and you can only see it at 20 feet, then you have 20/40 vision. So 2020 seems to be the number for this perfect vision. As we start to move away from that, our vision will start to become maybe a little bit less in sync with the divine idea of this truth of being.
What is your vision for the year 2020?
Well, I'm very hopeful for this year in that looking at the chart, at which wasn't just 00 Greenwich Mean, but it was midnight Greenwich Mean, which was what we had on the timetable. But for this chart at midnight Greenwich Mean time, there are a lot of really interesting indicators, and especially now that we're working more from the divine idea than from the position of the planets in the chart. So we're trying to use the chart to give us clues as to this divine mind, the message of the divine. And if we look at it from that perspective, one of the first things that I noticed about this chart is that there are 6 planets in Capricorn. What we're going to start to do is use Capricorn because it is ruled by Saturn as an indicator for this word principle. Principle meaning the power of the universe. This universe is under divine law, which means that it is under this one power. And it's very important that if we start to see with this perfect vision, that we start to understand that divine law is absolute goodness. It's absolute life. And it comes under the title of unconditional love, which was something that we were talking about earlier this morning, that most of us, we really don't know what these terms mean because we're looking from a sense level of understanding. We're accustomed to working with our 5 senses and the human interpretation of these terms. But the more we start to make our mind an avenue of awareness for this divine mind, and we start to understand things in terms of the absolute as opposed to the rational, then these terms start to have more meaning for us.
I'm wondering if maybe we can pause and then talk a little bit about what is Capricorn and what can we learn from that particular zodiac.
Well, Capricorn is one of the 12 signs of the zodiac. What I've always used the zodiac for was kind of a template or a schematic for this term total consciousness, for samadhi in yoga. I still use that because that diagram is supported by a lot of scripture, and especially cross-referenced it with revelations in the Bible. Because my first reading of revelations in the Bible many years ago was kind of like trying to decipher the encounter of somebody with a hallucinogenic drug. That all of this language and all of these symbolic experiences that they were talking about. But as I started to interpret this symbolically and using things like mythology and astrology and the parables of religion to help get a better understanding of what is the intention, what is the meaning behind these types of works. And basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to understand the infinite in finite terms, which isn't really an easy accomplishment. And so, what surrounds us is within us. And using the zodiac, which science began with the observation of nature. So astrology really, I think, was the mother of all sciences. The ancients would go outside and they would look at the heavens and they would see these images. They would see what was around them. And it was trying to give them clues as to what was going on in this divine consciousness, what was happening. Now, Capricorn is just one of these 12 signs that create this belt that surrounds the earth. They found was that when certain planets were in these particular zodiacal signs or these constellations that they invented or interpreted by the position of the stars, they noticed that they had certain characteristics. It had an influence on the environment on our Earth level. And so they started to create this catalog or this book that was the association between these celestial positions and life on Earth. And we use this every day. Just day and night is based on these astrological positions and the 4 seasons. And everything kind of has very general characteristics. The more that we begin to use this and understand it, it can be a helpful tool because we're really trying to do something with it. And that's one of the things that we're working with our Kriya Yoga is this whole thing of making a shift from living out from the testimony of your 5 senses, a belief in matter and a belief in mortality, to this spiritual understanding of your experience, that you're shifting from what is visible and tangible, shifting from what is invisible but tangible, and you're moving into what is invisible and intangible. Spirit, spiritual presence, divine presence, whatever we want to call it, that this is the only thing that is real. And what we have been saying about what makes it real is it is the only thing that it is self-existent. It's the only thing that has principle. And that's a major theme for this particular chart because of Capricorn. One of the characteristics of Capricorn is structure and form. We also equate Capricorn with authority and authoritarian figures. And so it's a perfect time for us to start to make this shift from interpreting things solely from a material level to this divine idea of these external symbols that are giving us clues as to the invisible, intangible divine presence.
So we said in the opening that we were going to look for the insights into the revelation of divine presence by using these 6 planets in the Capricorn. Can we just maybe delve a little further with these planets?
Yeah, and what we're going to do is what we've always done is we're going to refer to the diagram that we use for the logo, which we would call universal consciousness. And what's very interesting about that diagram is how it fits into the principles of creation. Say, for example, that white light passing through a prism breaks it off into 7 different colors. And so this pure white consciousness passing through this lens of a mind breaks it off into 7 different levels or 7 different appearances. In yoga, we refer to that as chakras. The 7 chakras can also be found in revelations in the Bible by the 7 churches. And what's really helpful is to understand what is meant by the term church, because church is referred to as the Lord's house. And the term house in the Bible, for my best understanding, means consciousness. So we're talking about divine consciousness. And these energy converters that are found in this astral body or in the mind have an external association with a planet. And so working the outer with the inner, because the chakra itself is really represented by the spirit within. The mirror effect of consciousness is, or what is moving outward in appearance is really moving inward in direction. And so as we're starting to understand this, we start to refer to the spirit within and the symbolism that is found about that, and what Saturn chakra really means for us, and how as we start to assimilate the information from within, connecting the dots with this outer transit or outer appearance, because what we're holding in our consciousness will actually start to outpicture in our external experience. And understanding the inner landscape of how consciousness works is something that I think this particular year is going to bring into our collective awareness.
Well, this is a good place to pause to hear a word from our sponsors. So listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Snow. Let's move. Or, it's like you wake up one morning, it's like, you know what? I'm tired.
Kriya Yoga Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, why don't we get back to talking about the planets that rule Capricorn and how they correlate with the chakras?
Yeah, referring back to the diagram that we use for the logo, where you have the image of the human, and then you've got these energy converters that are associated with nerve plexuses in the physical appearance or the physical form. There are 7 chakras, there are 7 personal planets that we work with. And it begins with the first chakra, or the first symbol that we'll use will be Saturn. And that is associated with what is called Muladhara chakra in yoga. In Revelations, it is referred to as the churches. And the first church that they talk about, the first letter is to Ephesus. And again, the church is the Lord's house. It's divine consciousness, and these churches in Revelations are the outlets for divine consciousness within each individual. And even the word individual is very specific. That why do they use the word individual? Because it means in meaning not, dividual meaning divided. And so it is from this point where we are in union with the divine that everything begins to originate. And from this understanding, as we start to move into this 2020, as we move into this new year that we're approaching, and there are 6 planets, Mercury, Jupiter, the Sun, Saturn, Pluto. These are all in Capricorn. And in the chart that I'm looking at, which is Greenwich Mean Time, it has Libra rising and Capricorn on the cusp of the 4th house. And so Venus is the ruler of this chart, and Venus is in Aquarius. And Aquarius is the masculine side of Muladhara chakra. Capricorn is the feminine side. And so both of them, Capricorn and Aquarius, are ruled by Saturn. And so the emphasis here of Saturn being in Capricorn, which is its sign of rulership, in the 4th house, which is its natal position of, or really being in detriment because it is the opposite of its house placement, which would be in the natural zodiac, the 10th house. So there's a lot of emphasis here understanding some of these important terms like principle, like existence, that we can work with, because principle, again, doesn't just mean the head of the school. Principle here is the power of the universe. And the power of the universe is that it is self-existent. It is the only self-existent power of this universe. That is the source of all eternal life. And everything that we're trying to do here is to really start to understand ourselves from this spiritual perspective. And the reason that you want to do it is because it becomes a demonstrable principle. It's not something the way the old theology placed this whole concept of religion and reduced it to a belief system that there were two worlds. There was this world and there was thy kingdom. And that we had to do our time in this world, and if we adhered to the rules and the regulations of the divine, then of course in this next world we would get our reward. But it doesn't play out like that. It doesn't work like that. There aren't two worlds. There's only one universe. There's only one world. And everything is dependent upon my perception of what is before me. And so if I assume this mortal identity and I accept that I am a finite creature, then I have an expiration date. I believe in matter. But if I reject that and I insist that I am an eternal spiritual being and I assume spiritual identity, then by giving up my belief in matter and filling my consciousness with these divine ideas, it will lift me out of this limited understanding of myself. And it will take me out of this law of karma, which is basically the law of reciprocity, that what we're putting out is what we're getting back. And it puts me under the government of divine law, which is absolute life, eternal life. And I don't have to wait to get that. That is something that I really anticipate will start to come into the collective consciousness as a result of these positions, that it'll be more available to the human, which is really the message of the Christ. And that's why Christmas, Christ's Mass, comes before this new year. And so the reason we're going over this now is to kind of give us some lead time to prepare ourselves for this revelation.
You had mentioned the fourth house. Can you review what that might mean for us?
Yeah, the houses are the departments in life that most of this is going to externalize itself in. And so the fourth house is our house of nurturance. It is how we protect ourselves. It is how we put things into form. The fourth house is associated with home, hearth, mother. With the sun, Saturn, Pluto, and Venus all in the fourth house in this particular chart, you're going to see how that becomes the department in our lives where this divine idea is most impressionable. And again, everything is always going to be dependent upon my level of consciousness, my degree of awareness. But for those of us that are prepared for this, it's good to know that this is the department in your life where you might experience this revelation.
It seems like the number 7 comes up quite often in spiritual studies. And I see we have it also here in your notes. Can you talk to us about the importance of that number?
Well, yeah, 7, like I had said earlier, white light, when it goes through a prism, breaks off into 7 different colors. It is metaphorically, it is the number of creation. In music, there are 7 notes. There are 12 tones. The number 7, 7 days of the week. And in Revelations, there are 7 candlesticks that are mentioned, 7 churches, 7 stars. And the churches are these points in consciousness where divine presence is available to us. And the 7 candlesticks were associated with the 7 divine purposes, which must become our consciousness.
Well, I see we do have a passage from Revelations 2:1 here in our notes. Would you talk to us about that?
Yeah, Revelations 2:1. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write these things, saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. See, Saturn represents what we think, and what we think is real, and what we call authority. Living from the divine idea of authority is taking orders from the spirit within. And the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand is this inner spirit. It's also referred to as the Christ. And so we want to get our information from this spirit within and not the 5 physical senses. So here we're really trying to think differently, which means to shift from material sense to spiritual understanding. And this is what we mean by perfect vision. And it's often referred to as 2020, which is the upcoming year. And it all reminds me of, say, for example, in flying, in aeronautics, they have what's called VFR, which is visual flight rules, versus IFR, which are instrument flight rules. And we're moving from a sense level of living to the spiritual truth of being, which is the highest octave of Saturn or principle, or as what we call the divine idea of Saturn. And so this becomes something that is going to be revealed to us as a collective purpose. That these 7 spiritual purposes is really a collective purpose. And everything's going to spill over and become an understanding of this one mind, this one truth of being that will liberate us from this false sense of existence so that we can start to demonstrate the principles of the divine and not fall under the government of the human concept of what is real anymore.
So again, it really comes down to what you've been saying all along, is how we think is what we become. And if Saturn represents what we think, then we want to make adjustments and moves to be able to think spiritually as opposed to humanly.
Right, to forsake all human thinking for divine knowing.
Well, this is a good place to start closing down our program for today. So listeners, be sure to visit the website, www.ipdtransform.com. And once you're there, 3/4 of the way down on the homepage, you'll see a section entitled Swami Says Recent Posts. And you can click on those shows there to further your spiritual developments. Don't forget the online classes tab will enable you to access Swami's free webinars that he does Wednesdays at noon. Swami, any final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage everybody to prepare themselves for this upcoming new year. And of course, we do have some holidays that will help us prepare for this new vision that we can anticipate for the upcoming change. And with that, namaste.
And thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.